Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to some more Warpforge as the season has ended, as we can see here. And I just thought this was pretty cool to showcase, because this is the first time that I am hitting top 50. I've always been in the hunt, always been on the leaderboard since the first season. But honestly, I tend to lose motivation towards the end of the season, and here, thankfully, I was able to snag a spot. Which is funny because I think it was last season of the season before I had a higher rating, but did not quite secure that top spot. So things might have cooled down a little bit during this season, which made it a little bit easier to get there. Also, it felt easier to climb playing Uriel Aggro, which definitely is still, I would say, my go-to deck. But today I'm really here just to talk about the end of the season, what's coming up next for Warpforge. Really thinking about the roadmap. If it's all accurate from November, we should be seeing some sort of expansion in March. I'm not sure when. We don't have any information. I've actually have reached out to EG before, and they're keeping their cards close to their chest and just saying exciting things to come. So here's to hoping that March is going to be a great month for Warpforge, and I'm just happy that I was able to get the leaderboard spot this month, get that cool card back that I see a lot of the players I play against have. So it's a good feeling, and I didn't want to click away from the screen before it all finishes up. And it's nice. I mean, it feels like the season rewards are not bad. Like, so 8 all army booster packs. Sure, if you could choose a faction, might be nicer. We got the 3 card back, which at some point I'll maybe try and go for the top 10, or I forget how they do the breakdown, or top 5. So not bad. A bunch of Blackstones for drafting and a bunch of gems. So yeah, let's just get into it. Thanks all for sticking with the channel or following. If you're new here, thanks so much. Always appreciate the likes and comments and subscribes. So it is day 1 of the new rank season. We do not have a balance patch. I'm sure we'll have a balance patch coming soon, which always releases. It kind of lags behind by a week. Not really sure why they do that, and I think a lot of the content creators like BJ and Ecclesiarch and I have all commented, like, let's just sync it up with the season. That kind of makes more sense. But for now, this is the way they're doing it. So we've got a week to basically play the same meta. And if it's anything like last season, I really want to talk about 3 decks today that pretty much everyone should be trying or should be playing with like really solid win rates. I think we're going to see the stats as well in the next week or so, so we'll really be able to get into that a little bit more. But essentially, this is a video for the end of the season, the start of the new season, and what should I be recommending that you guys play. Having gotten a solid middle of the pack leaderboard spot at 28 this month, or this last month. So I'm not going to go too much into this deck. Everyone knows it. This is my current list for Uriel Aggro. There have been a couple changes. I ended up going with 2 scouts and kind of cutting this 4 or 5 drop that I've been trying for quite a bit. Actually, let's get some music going. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I was feeling a little quiet there, which I realized because the sound was off when we were getting in screen. My cat has to visit for this video. I hope you all enjoy. So nothing crazy here. These are all the components I've been very happy with. I did toy with like 2 Storm Ravens when it felt like orcs were, really present in the meta with everyone trying the new reinforcements, stuff like that. But I just have continued to feel like this card underwhelms me when I have 2 copies of it, and I just really think that having 1 copy is great. So I've really come to like the 2 scouts. I was only running 1 before. It really just helps clean up the curve when you've got double 6 drop or double 5 drop, or just like a really awkward hand for your codex triggers, because getting your codex triggers every single turn is really what's going to allow you to pull ahead in these races. So I still feel like Uriel Aggro is the top tier deck. And let me know if you'd like me to do more videos on, kind of the meta and like tier lists and things like that. I used to do that quite a lot. I feel like BJ and Ecclesiarch do a really great job, and some other content creators too. But if you'd like to see more of that stuff from me, definitely let me know. So this is really what I would boot up if you've got access to all these cards. This is what I have felt is the optimal Uriel build. And I didn't start climbing in the season last month till like 2 weeks in. And then I went from 2,500 points to like 3,300 in a couple sessions. I was sitting down with this deck. You know, you knock out games really quick. It's just a really efficient deck. However, the last deck that we'll talk about, we'll kind of see if that stops this deck from being on top anymore, because it might be a tougher matchup for Uriel. So, still, I would say that this is just an excellent deck to take onto the ladder and play with. So what's kind of the second best or other option, that I would recommend to y'all? I think it's got to be Medreyal. And now I'm missing pieces. I don't have the I'm missing the 4 cost legendary that gives Shuriken 2 to your leader. Mostly you're never really putting that on a unit. And I think I'm also missing the Kelinaris, the 6-drop. And I know sometimes people like mess with the build for this, so I would still go off of like what I think was showcased as Shrigmamail's list that BJ featured on his channel. This is what I have to work with. I do have the Wailing Doom, which is nice. I do have Nadu as well for the legendaries, and then just kind of like a typical, very kind of efficient lower curve, and then kind of topping off with the Hemlock Wraith Fighters, which are just a really, really potent tool for stabilizing and closing out the game. But I think if you're playing anything like in the ballpark of this Medreyal list, I just think that she is one of those leaders and one of those deck options that just, the more games you get under your belt, the more you understand it. And it really can beat most things. Sure, it doesn't have great matchups into everything. Like I would say, generally, I like playing the Uriel side of this matchup. However, it certainly can be won. And I think Medreyal also gets a little bit of a bump against any leader that can't easily clear her ephemeral warlord ability. So if you're playing against Gordrang, this deck is going to be, it's really hard. I think when I first was playing Gordrang, I knew the matchup was tough, but it didn't feel super unwinnable. Then I played a bunch on stream, maybe a week or so ago, and figured out very quickly that this match is like, it's 0%, or like a 20% win rate against Medreyal, because you just can't stop their Spirit Stone accumulation and just their ability to just completely run over you. Very efficient cards, having access to so many stun opportunities as well, that you can directly target, right? It's not random like with the Judiciary from the Ultramarines. I just think that Medreyal is probably here to stay for a while. It just really capitalizes on, if your opponent is not staying in lockstep with you every single turn to clear your Spirit Stones, you're just going to outvalue your opponent for the most part. Even though you don't have any card draw, you're just getting more and more out of your cards, and you're able to make, a unit that can threaten 3 damage or get a Spirit Stone every turn. So I think if you've been waiting for an opportunity to play this deck or try this out, it's definitely going to feel different than Uriel Aggro. It's definitely going to feel different than some of the other control matchups. This is kind of like aggro mid-range-ish. I think I would say it's more mid-range, because you can play the control sort of component against Uriel, and you can play the aggressive component against other control decks. But I just think that Eldar are in a pretty good place in the meta right now, and I played a ton against Eldar this month in particular, and I just do think that they're a really, really balanced option, that if you can really get all of the play patterns kind of under your belt, you're going to do well with this, and you will make a lot of progress. And now, the last deck, and I'll talk a little bit more in depth about how we arrived here with the Ghaz Control. Huge shout out to BJ the Brave for, I think, being, one of the first folks to really feature this kind of list and build this list. And BJ, really featured this as a mill deck essentially. Like you can go so long, you can actually mill out your opponent. And I had played with so many different orc builds. I still really think that Gordrang has potential, but it may be sort of like Abaddon, right? Where the fact that he does have a dead mode for his ability when you just like can't attack your opponent, right? Or it's not going to be helpful to attack your opponent. The fact that you can't use your ability effectively is really, really punishing. Whereas like when Abaddon changed, right? And so now he doesn't just put a buff on a unit, he can also heal himself. That's where I think Gordrang may need that sort of treatment in the future. Or if they play, they do anything that can really give him a bit more bang for his buck, or allow him to develop a little bit more efficiently while controlling the board, or controlling their warlord, maybe he'll be good. But I think for now, I have fully settled on, I think Ghaz and probably this control build is the best orc deck that is out there. I think Gruk is still great, but I think it can be awkward and it can be slow, it can be clunky, especially when you consider playing against Uriel. I think he fell off a bit at the end of the season, but I just do think that deck is here to stay. And if you don't have a game plan for the most efficient aggressive deck in the format, you're probably going to have a hard time. And I, from the handful of matchups that I had against Gaskull playing Uriel, it's tough, especially when we consider probably the star card of this build, Grizzled Scarboy. We all knew that this was going to be defining the format in the sense of it's either going to be really good or really bad. And what's interesting is it kind of turned out like in the middle, but it's definitely a huge role player in this particular build. And getting that one armor on turn 5 or even slightly after, especially because orcs are able to play Will of Gork, which allows you to reset the board if you lose a little bit of tempo, spending your 5 energy on Grizzled Scarboy. It's really hard to punch through and punch down on this very, very tanky orc strategy. And then you're running some of the more efficient, flank units in the game, which allow you to just continually answer and control the board essentially at every point in the game. And then in addition that I really was asking BJ quite a lot of questions about because I was hesitant to put it in, was the Burner Boy package with Spanner. And I think it gives you another like board clear. It gives you another way to reset the board, which is exactly what a control deck needs. But also you can play out the Spanner as a unit. You can play out the Burner Boy as a unit. It just actually makes quite a difference. And at first I was like, that seems like a little too greedy. That seems like a little unnecessary. But I've really come around to it as this deck has been fleshed out more and more. And Orcs already had really good control. Just cards like access to some of the best control strategies in the game. And I think this deck has now like really solidified like this is kind of what it looks like, right? You've got Makari, which you can pressure with. That's really annoying. Helps you pick off units. You've got the Gretchen mobs to set up, and protect yourself or, make them have to punch through. Tide of Muscle for card advantage. War Bikers, Orc Knob, Squig Buggy, Snazwagon, and Veteran Stormboy, all like really good flank units. You've got Iron Gob to stabilize and heal yourself. And then I would say one of the other stars, Boss Knob, that's just been an absolute overperformer. Being able to just drop a body that, it can die to, an intercessor or something like that, but that is going to buff some of your units. Being able to go Orc Knob into Boss Knob has just been like an incredible curve, because then this just has a higher likelihood of sticking on the board and giving your Boss Knob flank when it comes into play to maybe trade something. Or maybe not even trade, but like kill something and survive. You get so much value out of every single card. And then you've just got the top end with Rock Invasion, which, some people are like, did it get buffed? Did it get nerfed? I would still say that it's a nerf because when you played Rock Invasion and you could hit Ardshell Gurk as a part of it, it just made it so much less likely for you to lose that game at all. However, it does have the upside now of pulling an Orc Knob, which can Usually from this deck, I don't think it's going to win you the game on the spot, but it gets pretty close. You know, whether you've got like maybe a boss knob out or something, and then you just go off and gain like 1,000,000 life or something like that. I could see that being pretty tough. You've got Ardshell Gurkha is just like essentially a win condition, right? If they don't answer it, they're going to kill you. And then Will of Gork, just the fact that, you know, if your opponent is not playing around this card, right, and even when they are playing around it but you don't have it, it really changes the way that the matchup has to go. Usually with aggro, and especially playing Uriel, you just push damage and you use the least amount of units to do that. So, you know, you don't really get so punished for Will of Gork unless you're like really trying to curve out and go wide with an Impulsor, which I would not recommend. But it's just this deck just has access to some of the best control tools, if not the best, in the game. I played a bunch of games with it actually. It is slow, so it's one of those decks where like I probably wouldn't recommend it for like climbing necessarily. Although I think the win rate on this deck is probably just going to be pretty high. And I bet it will be higher this next month because people will have more games with it and play it better. And I do think that it's probably a great deck to combat Uriel specifically. I don't know how the matchup is like in terms of win rate. When I think I won more games as Uriel than I lost, but certainly the games that they were able to Scarboy early, I lost those games for the most part. So I think the Ghaz full control, and I think people are already tired of this deck, which I do get because like control can feel like very annoying to play. As someone who's played Magic for years and played into like Teferi metas for years, where like it feels like by turn 3 or 4, because they've used a very potent control Teferi tool, it's like, all right, well, I should play the game out, but I'm probably just going to end up losing. I can get how that's frustrating, but I do think that this just adds another meta component, right? Because if we see more Ghaz Control, then maybe other slower control strategies can actually start to shine, right? Where, you know, maybe there's Neurothrope control, maybe Anvir can come back. You know, maybe even, you know, Sylar could do something in a control meta where you can, you know, actually spend time using your ability each turn or maximizing on it. So I think, you know, there's always a boogeyman, there's always something that people don't like, but then that sometimes opens the door for things that other people have not even gotten to play yet. And I think if things shift more towards a Ghaz meta, then I think we will see other options that we don't get to see all the time. I don't know that this is the optimal build, but I'm pretty sure this is like very close to what BJ has been piloting, and I think he's an excellent player, an excellent deck builder, so I really would trust the process with this. Definitely still takes some skill to know like what you're mulliganing, what you're keeping, what you're playing towards in the mid game, trying not to fall behind in the early game. But I think if you haven't been playing this deck or trying it, or you've kind of been sleeping on it, like here is your excuse to go out and like really give it a shot. And I might be running this deck more in the next season depending on the nerfs or buffs, because I think if we see some nerfs from you know, pointed towards Ultramarines, if they really want to tone down Uriel a bit more, then I might hop on the Ghaz wagon, as it were. So those are the 3 decks that I'm recommending you guys today. I really think that they're really great options. You know, as someone who's just like a hardcore Uriel player, I still, you know, before the buffs or nerfs or whenever they come, still think that Uriel just is the most consistent, highest win rate deck for me, and that it feels very seamless when I play it, which is just like kind of also a convenience thing, right? I can sit down and I know I'm not going to be making play mistakes, because rarely do I have decisions that I'm not understanding, because I feel like I have the matchups like very much down in my head. With Ghaz, it's probably going to take some time. And I think this season is really where I'm going to try and feature some more Eldar in the channel. I've been meaning to for a while, but I didn't want to mess up my win rate. So I think this season I'm going to try and get you at least a video on Medreyal Galen, you know, its strengths, its weaknesses, a little bit more of a deeper dive. So that's probably all I have for you today. I'm sure I could talk more and more about meta stuff and all of that, but I think last season was quite a bit of fun. Interested to see where the buffs and nerfs go this season, and I'll try to have those videos up for you guys pretty soon. So thanks as always for being here with me, and I will catch you next time.